discussed yesterday that happiness doesn't really depend on what you have, but on what you think. And also your effectivity at work requires your ability to be positive, optimistic, focused, to overcome anger, etc. All this also requires mind management. We also discussed that the thoughts we create, these bundles of energy, they impact our bodily health. But they also draw circumstances to our life. So if you want good circumstances to come your way, then improve your thoughts to begin with. The interesting thing is, it's an internal resource. Everybody has the ability to think. All you need to do is to learn the art of mind management, because the mind is the factory for the thoughts. So we discussed the secret of being happy by counting your blessings. Now, every time we bring the right thoughts to ourselves, that will also become a laborious thing. Is there some better way to do it? There is. This brain of ours is infinitely programmable. And you can program it for the better or the worse. First, take a look at how we program it to become experts in anything. Some people say we are born as experts or not born as experts. It's all a matter of birth. And when this question of coming with a destiny is raised, the example of Mozart is given very often. He was such a child genius at the age of 4. He was composing music. And when he was 7 years old, he took a tour of Europe, where he was hardly visible above the harpsichord. And yet the music that he was producing was amazing audiences all over. So people say, look, he was born with it. A 4-year-old, 7-year-old, he could do it. Thus, Mozart had one special ability up his sleeve, and that was absolute pitch. Absolute pitch is the ability to recognize the scale of a note merely by hearing, without any reference to match with. Just hear, yes, A sharp. It is said, statistics show that 1 out of 5,000 people on the average in the world have absolute pitch. With a reference note, anybody can do it, but without any references. Even the famous Beethoven did not have the absolute pitch, but Mozart did. And it is said you are either born with it or not born with it. It's some of those things that come through destiny. And Mozart was born with the destiny, the music in his cup. However, one scientist from Japan, one lady teacher, went about trying to dispel this myth. Her name was Ayako Sakakibara. And she is of the Ichiongai Music School. She took 24 children between the ages of 2 and 6 and said, I will teach them absolute pitch. So all they had to do was give 5 minutes a day, 5 times a day, 5 minutes each. And there they would be made to practice. Here's this, now tell me. Here's this, now tell me. So 5 minutes at a time, 5 times a day. At the end of 55 weeks, 22 out of the 24 children had developed absolute pitch. And the 2 who did not were the ones who had dropped out. So she had a 100% success rate. Where 1 out of 5,000 people has absolute pitch, she has managed to teach it to 22 children. That made scientists realize that this brain can be configured as you wish. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Now when one neuron fires another, and it repeatedly keeps firing that one, then an organic change happens between the joints, which makes it easier for the first neuron to fire the second. That is what enables learning. And the little children can learn 50 times faster than us because they may have a little less neurons. The neurons keep increasing till the age of 12. Then it's fixed. But the little children have got far more axons than us, which link up the neurons. And that is the reason why they just hear a language and within a year they have learned their mother tongue. They don't need to be taught. And we people keep struggling even after years to learn a new language. So, what she had done to those children was enable their brains to get configured such that they would develop absolute pitch. Now, when this data got revealed to the world, some of the adults got inspired that we may have less axons, but if we try hard enough, we can also develop absolute pitch. And some of them really succeeded. Now they had to try for years, but at the end of it, they succeeded. So this is the nature of the brain. Now how did Mozart develop this absolute pitch? How did he get his musical talent? It was not that it just came by his destiny. His destiny ensured that he was born in a particular house. His father was a music teacher. And he wrote a book on how to teach music to children. So, elder to Mozart was a daughter, Maria Anna, for whom it is said by the age of 11 she was performing like professional musicians. Now the father in raising Maria Anna must have learned some lessons and decided to do a better job on Mozart. And the consequence of all that training from the age of 1 was that Mozart developed absolute pitch and he developed such mastery. So this is our infinitely teachable brain. Whenever we wish to do anything, the brain fires neurons in the sensory motor region, the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex, enabling us to do actions and think thoughts and analyze. So when those are repeated again and again, learning happens. One scientist called Donald Hebb, he proposed this Hebbian theory of learning, that neurons that fire together, wire together. But he also then explained that if you stop practicing, the organic reactions that had happened, they reverse. And hence, our scriptures say, anabhyasena visham vidya. If you don't practice, your knowledge will start evaporating. The famous musician Ravi Shankar, he was asked by correspondents that you have been doing public performances around the world for 50 years now. Do you still need to practice? He said, you know what? If I don't practice for 2 weeks, I know the difference. If I don't practice for 1 month, the critics, they know the difference. If I don't practice for 2 months, the general audience knows the difference. So that vidya disappears with lack of practice. But then the good news is that next time when you start practicing, it comes back much more easily. For these reactions to again happen, you don't require as much labor as the previous time. Now this nature of the brain enables us to form habits. What are habits? Little programs that our brain creates to make our works easier. Like for example, the first time when you start typing, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog or whatever he does, your brain exerts itself to the maximum. Where is the A, where is the B? Lift this ring finger of the left hand and put it there. No, lift this finger and put it there. You labor so much. And as you keep practicing, by the end of 1 year, you pick up a speed of 80 words per minute. Now your fingers are flying over the keyboard. What has happened? If somebody did not know typing and came and saw you for the first time, they would say, what is this? Have you developed some yogic siddhi? You'd say it is not siddhi, it is the consequence of 1 year of practice. That 1 year of practice, it wired up the brain such that you just need to think and automatically the actions happen. Those programs get stored in the basal ganglia. And that is what frees up your brain. So that while typing you can even think. Otherwise, the amount of labor you had to put in first day, if you have to put in today as well, along with typing, you will not be able to think. Likewise, the first time you try driving and supposing it has got a stick gear and then the clutch as well, you have to control so many things, the brain is fully exerting. But then as the practice keeps happening, then it becomes automatic. Now you are also looking in front and you are also speaking to your co-passengers and also listening to Radio Mirchi and also controlling the steering, etc. So all things are happening by habit, but the moment something extraordinary happens, suddenly somebody comes, immediately the brain will say, okay, now move out of the auto mode into the conscious mode. So, these habits also get created in our behaviors. We do so much of our works and our thoughts merely in the auto mode without much concentration upon it. Like when you get up in the morning, you go for your daily ablutions, you don't have to do a philosophic debate. Should I take a bath or not? It's already pre-decided and you are just doing it in auto mode by habit. Similarly, the thoughts that we create, somebody becomes habitually a positive thinker, somebody becomes habitually a worrier. So how do these habits get established within us? For better or for worse? Some habits are bad, they pull us down. Some habits are good, they lift us up. So how do these habits get established? Now suppose you came from your office and sat down on your sofa in the living room to watch the TV, and your mind created the desire, if I could have coffee, it would be so nice. So you arranged for the coffee, you took the coffee, and naturally it gave a little bit of happiness to the brain. So the next day, again when you sat down, the brain automatically created the desire for coffee because you had done it yesterday. And when you got the coffee, the reward came, the little bit of pleasure to the brain. That reinforced the habit loop. What is the habit loop? there is a cue or a trigger, and then there is action, and there is a reward. So if you do it for 1 month, now the habit gets established. Every time you sit before the TV, the brain says, I need coffee. And the more you take the coffee, the more the habit gets reinforced until it grips your brain. Now somebody's got a habit of fast foods. Somebody's got a habit of cigarettes, etc. So neurological science has seen that you do a brain surgery, even after that the habit doesn't go. It becomes so strong. So these habits have this loop, a cue or a trigger, and then the action, and then the reward. Like for example, in today's scenario, you are working on your laptop, something so boring, I have to prepare a report for my boss, and the email chimes. So the brain thinks, little diversion will give me little happiness. And you divert to take a look at what message has come. Now naturally that distraction provides a relief to the brain, which is the reward. And if you do it a few times, now the habit gets created. The moment the email chimes, people have become email addicts. One can become addict of anything. Whenever there is pleasure, somebody is addict of tea, somebody is addict of seeing the news. So now that habit grips the mind. These habits, like I said, can work to our advantage or disadvantage. The habit does not care whether I am good or bad. You have programmed it. Compare it to a macro that you place on one cell of your Excel sheet. So the macro will do its job. Whatever number you put, the macro will do its job. Now if your macros were wrong, the Excel sheet will be a mess. The macro doesn't say that, I'm right or wrong. I will just do my job. Similarly, this habit loop, once it's established, it will do its work. And that is why the reason why somebody is gripped with drugs, they find it so difficult. I have got devotees whose children became drug addicts. They had to send them to rehab centers. Nothing was working. They would run away from there. The habit loop was so strongly established. And the bad news is that the bad habits come easily. And the good habits, you have to work hard to establish them. But the problem is the bad habits are difficult to live with. And the good habits are easy to live with, but difficult to establish. So this habit system applies to our thoughts as well. That is the mindset which we develop. So the mindset is our natural way of thinking, which we strengthen through the habit loop. And that is why the question arises. 90% of our actions through the day are habitual. 90%. Only 10% you are conscious about them. So, if we wish to lift ourselves up in life, it is important to learn how to dismantle bad habits and how to establish good habits. That is the important thing. So these habits are like the force of gravitation. To break through a bad habit or to establish a good habit requires a lot of energy in the beginning. The pull is there. Just like when a rocket is sent into space, the maximum fuel is expended in the beginning, when it's breaking through the gravitational force. And later on it becomes easier and easier and easier. And finally it's going with almost zero fuel. Likewise, if you want to change your habits, first of all you need to exert yourself. And that is where people lose heart. It's so difficult. Like I tell people, wake up in the morning and do some nice sadhana in the morning. Swamiji, it is so difficult, some people will say, because they have the habit of waking up late. And those who have established the habit of waking up early, it is automatic. So all you need to do is to force yourself through the initial period. And it becomes easier and easier and easier. That is the secret to it. So simple. In Odisha there are lots of elephants. So the southernmost district is Gajapati district. And there I was just traveling and I came to these, by the side of Mahendragiri Parvat there was elephant trainers. And they had tied elephants with a rope around their leg to a peg on the ground. That astonished me. I asked the Mahavat that this huge creature you have tied with a wooden peg through a rope, grass rope. The elephant can pull a tree out. He said, Swamiji, when this elephant was a little baby, few days old, we tied it up. So it became conditioned that if there is a rope around my leg, I can't do anything about it, because at that time it could do nothing. So we people also condition ourselves by our habits. And that is why, if you wish to break through a habit, to establish a new habit, what is required is willpower. This willpower is such an important virtue. What is willpower? The ability to resist something that gives pleasure because it is not beneficial. And the ability to do something that is painful, even though it is painful, but it is beneficial. So this self-discipline is so important in life. If you have self-discipline, willpower, you will eat the right things. You will do the exercise whether it's painful or not. You will control your tongue. You will focus your mind. All the things will fall into place when you have willpower. One scientist in Stanford did an experiment called the Toddler's torture. His name was Walter Mischel. He wanted to test the willpower of 3-year-olds. Now to a 3-year-old, you can't explain too much. You can't say that, look, you now do like this and 20 years later you will have a good career. What will the 3-year-old understand about long-term happiness versus short-term pleasure? So this is how Walter Mischel designed the test. He would put a marshmallow in front of the toddler and say, if you like, you can eat it. But if you don't eat it for 20 minutes, you will get 2 marshmallows. Understand? The toddler would be left with the marshmallow and the researcher would look from the window, what is the toddler doing? For some toddlers, it was a no-go. When there is happiness out here, where is the question of resisting it? The moment the researcher left, they would pick it and put it in the mouth. Chapter closed. Some toddlers, they pondered over this for 2 minutes. What kind of puzzle is this? First time in my 3-year-old life I've been challenged like this. There is happiness there, and he says, don't eat it. After 2 minutes, they would say, why think so hard? Just go ahead and eat it. Some toddlers, they actually pondered over this for 7-8 minutes, resisting. And the way they would resist was also very interesting. They would try and divert themselves. Don't look at it. But then after 7-8 minutes, the intellect would give way to the mind. Chalo, khai it. Some of the toddlers, they actually lasted out for the 20 minutes. So, they got the reward. Now an interesting twist happened to this experiment later on. Walter Mischel's 2 daughters were also in that sample of 500 children who were tested. And when they grew up, they went to Stanford. So, interest was revived in this project. And where are those children now? They were traced out and followed for the next 15 years. The data was so astonishing. Those children who had the weakest willpower, they were having the biggest problems in life. Because they did not have control over their speech. They were getting into fights, there had been divorce cases, they were always socially unpopular. And because they were not focused in what was not pleasurable, so they would not study sincerely, they would not work in their career sincerely, and the consequence, they were lower on their SAT scores, they had poor jobs, they were not performing well. Because they didn't control their tongue, their health was bad, and they had got chemical addictions. And worse thing, 12% of them, of that section, they had been to jail and come back. On the other hand, the children who had displayed the maximum willpower, they were doing the best in their lives. Because they were sincere in their work and their studies. They were energetic and healthful in their habits. They were controlled in their tongue. Their social relationships were harmonious. They were considered responsible citizens. They didn't have vices. All a consequence of willpower. That was when scientists realized that this willpower is the crowning virtue in human beings. And do you know where does this willpower come from? Our human brain is special amongst all the creatures. So one specialty is its weight ratio to the body weight. It is 1/50th of the body weight, whereas the other creatures have much less. So we've got a bigger brain. But also it has got an additional part. These are the prefrontal lobes of the neocortex, also called the prefrontal cortex. So that prefrontal cortex of ours gives us humans 3 special abilities which the creatures don't have. The first is, I want. Awareness of my higher goal. The second, I will. Even though this is painful, still I will do it. Now the animal doesn't have that. Animal will not say that, I love green grass, but today for spiritual elevation I will eat brown grass. Animal says, whatever pleases my senses, do it. I will. And the third one is, I won't. This one is easy and gratifying, but I will not. These 3 abilities come from this prefrontal cortex of the human brain. And that is what enables us to move ahead in life. Somebody said that, what is the biggest obstacle to your highest goal? The biggest obstacle is an easier path to a lower goal. There is a lower goal and that is easier, so let's go this way. And if you want to go to the higher goal, you have to resist the lower goal. Because any goal worthy of achieving is always upstream. And that is where willpower is required. All day long you need it. When you go to office, do you enjoy your office work? Very few people. Most people don't. I have to go because I have to go because I have to earn. If you had the option of getting your salary at home, then everybody would say, okay, give it to me at home, I'll not work. So the mind doesn't like working, but the brain uses that willpower. Come on, sit and keep doing it. That you are exerting your willpower throughout the day in all the tasks to a greater or little extent. Vidyarthi sukharthi tyajate vidya, vidyarthi tyajate sukham. Our Shastras say, one who is sukharthi will reject vidya because learning requires austerity. And vidyarthi tyajate sukham. One who is the seeker of knowledge rejects immediate gratification. Sukharthina kuto vidyarthina sukham. So all this comes from this prefrontal cortex which enables us to be really human. So now, how do you increase your willpower? Very interesting. You can increase it by exercising it. Just like how do you improve your muscles? By exercising them. It's like how do you improve your mathematical ability? By exercising it. When you keep solving math problems, the portion of the brain responsible for math problems keeps increasing its packing of grey matter and you become better and better at it. Likewise, every time you exert your willpower, this prefrontal cortex grows. So every time you know something is wrong, still you do it, you weaken yourself. And when you know something is right, but painful, yet you do it, you strengthen yourself. So with one little act, we can weaken or strengthen the willpower. The saints, they knew this. And that is why they used to practice in our Sanatana Dharma. Austerities is such a big thing. India is called Tapo Bhumi. This is called Bhog Bhumi. Now that is Tapo Bhumi. Why? Austerities. So saints knew the secret. Swami Ram Tirth, he was a Swamiji who came to US. He was the second after Swami Vivekananda. Very well known in northern India. So he came to USA and he found that he was attached to apples. So every time he would want to think of Sri Krishna, the apple would come to his mind. Now what to do? So he said, all right, it is a fight between myself and the mind. He did not give in. He exerted his willpower. He would keep an apple in his room. Now going and coming, the mind gets tempted. Can I eat the apple? See, it's there. The senses get tempted. He would scold them. No. Leave it there for 6 days, the apple would rot, then he would throw it off. That is how he mastered his mind, by enhancing his willpower. So that is the secret to growing this golden virtue. Now little children, sometimes they can develop this virtue through verbalization. Have you ever heard of verbalization? You'll say, Swamiji, I've heard of galvanization of steel and vulcanization of rubber tire tubes. Now you're talking about verbalization of babies? Yeah. Roger Ferber, he gave the sleep training technique. So what he did was this. He says, the moment that infant starts crying, so he says do it between the age of 18 months and 3 years. So he says, between 6 months and 18 months, and 2 years if I remember right. 6 months and 2 years. He says, the moment the baby starts crying, the parents immediately come to the rescue. No, stop, come. So the baby doesn't learn how to handle the distress. Now he says, don't respond like that. First day, let the baby cry for so many minutes, then come, touch the baby, but don't lift it up. Then after so many minutes, you lift the baby. And then second day, do like this, third day, do like that. Based on whatever his experience or his theory, he gave his verbalization technique, sleep training for babies. Otherwise, I know parents who stay up all night because the baby wakes up at night. So, I was in one devotee's home, and nowadays they have the video camera on the baby. So on the screen we saw the baby has woken up. I said, your baby is awake. The baby was crying. He said, Swamiji, never mind. Never mind. The baby is crying. It's all right, Swamiji. Okay. So we just watched. The baby continued crying for a couple of minutes and then stopped and started speaking to itself. It had learned to tolerate distress. This was the growth of the willpower. So from a little age you can practice self-discipline. But I don't know about you, I don't think I was fervorized. Now supposing we were not fervorized, what option do we have today? You can practice your willpower today itself. Through small little acts. Supposing you decide I will not scratch myself, it's a little thing, but it grows your willpower. See, that is what they do in Vipassana. It's a Buddhist technique, Vipassana. So what they do is, they go for a Vipassana camp and they sit from morning to evening without moving, without scratching, without eating. Now the body urges. Can I eat something? No. Can I scratch? No. And people, they say over 6 days, they gave up smoking. First I was wondering, how can they just do it like that? But the fact is, they are training their willpower muscle. However, this is good. There is a technique that is even better. And this is the technique of meditation. See, in meditation, what do? You say, okay, my dear mind, you will remain at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The mind says, this is not giving me happiness. Can I think of rasgullas? And you tell the mind, hey, khabardar, you stay here. So all I want, I won't, I will, all these three faculties are getting exerted. Willpower and meditation is the best exercise to grow your willpower. Even if you don't succeed, you are still exerting yourself. And that is the important thing. So, scientists have discovered that in 3 hours of meditation, the brain functioning changes. And in 11 hours of meditation, major changes happen. So, if we can develop our willpower, we can then use this willpower to create a good habit. Let's say you want to make a habit, I will bathe with cold water every day. So use your willpower to create that. Or I will not use social media, whatever, you create it. And slowly, that behavior will become automatic for you. You first invest your willpower and make a habit. And then, you invest your willpower and make a second habit. And then you invest your willpower and make a third habit. That is how you keep on improving. We have talked about willpower, but there is something even bigger than willpower. I told you that willpower is the biggest, but there is something even bigger than willpower. So we discussed how to establish good habits with the help of willpower. But this willpower is a limited resource. It can get drained out. Just like your muscles you exert and then they get drained out. You want to do push-ups, so first one is easy, then less, and then muscle says no more. Same with willpower. You exert it and slowly it gives way. That is why you decided you will follow a diet and you said, all right, I'm following it 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day. On the 7th day, the willpower gives way and you go on a binge eating. And you say, no social media, no social media. The brain says, come on, no. And after 7 days, you find yourself surfing for 2 hours. So, we have to find something even better than willpower. This is what our Vedas are giving us, such wonderful knowledge. You will not get this anywhere in the world. They tell us there's a higher power called the why power. Willpower is about controlling the mind and the senses, primarily the mind. Why power, W-H-Y. Why power is about using your power of your intellect. When the intellect decides, it has the ability to control the mind. Like let us say that somebody is hungry since 4 days. Let us say. Now the mind, senses, even the intellect are tormented. Food. After 4 days, you bring 56 vyanjan on a silver plate. Sir, eat what you want. I see is that brown crusted gulab jamun, hot. The mind senses, this is good. Solution to our problems, 4 days of hunger. The mind asks the intellect, there's a gulab jamun in front. Can we eat it? The intellect sanctions, yes, I am also in great distress, go ahead. Intellect tells the mind tells the hand, and he's lifted up the gulab jamun. Now he's already started salivating on the anticipation of that pleasure. In that mudra, do you think you can create detachment, vairagya in that person? It's impossible, Swamiji. Not impossible. It will just take a split second. Just shout out, what are you doing? You wish to die? Die. The intellect listens, there's something wrong here. Intellect tells the mind stop, mind tells the hand stop. What's the matter? Arey, don't you know there is poison mixed in it? Poison! Immediate intellect decides, throw it. It tells the mind tells the hand, and he's thrown. This man who was hungry since 4 days has got detached from the gulab jamun. Why? The intellect decided it's harmful for me. Now you want to test his vairagya? You say, sir, I will give you $1 million. Please eat it. What will a dead man do with 1 million? I don't want it. You keep your 1 million. You can't tempt him. But ask him, have you seen anybody put poison in it? No, my friend has told me. Is your friend an avatar of Harishchandra? Is he the most truthful person on the planet? No, he tells many lies. One unreliable friend, one statement, and you got detached. Tell me, have you ever seen poison in your life? Now if I ask you, have you ever seen poison? Apart from the chemists, nobody has seen it. Without ever having seen poison, that detachment happened because the intellect got convinced. Please take the child behind. The intellect got convinced that this is harmful. The human intellect has this power. If it exerts itself, it can bring the mind under control. It just needs to exert itself. That is why you never shout at your boss. Does anybody shout at their boss? The boss may go on saying, you come late, you are insincere. Yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. Because the intellect says if you say anything, you will lose the job. It controls the mind. The anger always flows down. He controls it towards his boss and he goes and vents on his subordinate. It's not that he is free from anger, but he controlled it where he realized danger. And he vented on his subordinate. That subordinate vented on his subordinate. And that subordinate doesn't have a subordinate. He went home and vented on his wife. The wife, what to do? She vented on the child. The child vented on the dog. So the anger always flows down. Why? Because the intellect controls it from flowing upwards. Whenever the intellect decides, it will control the mind. Like I was saying that people don't like to work. See, when I first came to America, I saw this, somebody said to me, Swamiji, let's go to the market. So I said, all right. I was thinking some market like Karol Bagh or Chandni Chowk. And we reached the market. I said, where is the market? He said, below that there's a mall. So then I saw one board, TGI Fridays. Nowadays they write TGIF, but those times they were writing TGI Fridays. Then on an airport I saw TGI Fridays. Then another city I saw TGI Fridays. I asked somebody, what kind of shop is TGI Fridays and why did somebody name it TGI Fridays? Said, Swamiji, it means thank God it's Friday. So why should you thank God it's Friday? Because for 5 days you are working hard. And on Friday you feel liberated. Thank God it's Friday. So somebody said, Swamiji, on Monday morning, don't call anybody in America because everybody is in a bad mood. Maximum accidents happen on the road on Monday morning. So, people don't like to work. And yet they work. How do they manage to work? Because the intellect controls the mind. Whether you like it or you don't, you better work if you want to eat the food that you get on your table. That is how all of us live in life. In the morning, when you wake up, the mind says, can I keep sleeping? The intellect says, you've got work to do, so you control the mind. This power is given to human beings. Even a little child has got it. All day, year long, the child is playing around. Parents say, Swamiji, explain something to my child. I say, what should I explain? He doesn't study. Sometimes they call me from India. Swamiji, please speak to my child. He doesn't study. Beta, why do you not study? Uncle, my mind does not like to study. Big problem, the mind doesn't like to study. But the same child, when he or she goes for the annual exam, now they bring their mind under control. For 2 hours during the exam time, they are focused and just answering to the best of their ability. Now there is no distraction. They don't look at the neighbor, don't look outside the window. Now the mind is controlled. The child had the ability to control the mind. How did it manifest during the exam? The intellect decided these 2 hours are the most important. Now, if you are careless, Mr. Maniram, then the whole year will be lost. So once the intellect decided, it controlled the mind. This is the why power. Your intellect has the correct knowledge, the why to do something. If that child had retained such focus through the year, the child would have become a national level merit scholar. But through the year, the intellect's decision was that studies is important for my parents, not for me. They don't know what they are talking about. So even if the child takes the mind to the studies, the intellect says, come back. That is why in life we need to use this intellect to control the mind. That is the Buddhi Yog which Lord Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita. See, we did the yoga, but the Gita is saying Buddhi Yoga Upashritya, the yoga of the intellect. What is this yoga of the intellect? Arjun, empower your intellect with the right knowledge, and then with that intellect you control your mind. So how will you empower the intellect? By first of all listening very carefully for the next 10 minutes. So our Shastras say this is how you do it. Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. The first step is to hear or to read, like you are doing, so you gain good wisdom. This is always first the theory and then the practice. So if you want an empowered intellect, people ask what is the meaning of the Gayatri Mantra. Very popular. But so many meanings are running around. Somebody says it is the different chakras in the body, somebody says something else. The simple meaning, Om Bhur Bhuva Swa. This Trailokya, the 3 worlds. Tat Savitur Varenyam, that Lord who is illuminating the 3 worlds. I am surrendering, I am offering my respects to Him. May He illumine my intellect with divine wisdom. Because if the intellect is illumined, you will automatically act in the right direction. So, the first thing is to gather the wisdom, either through hearing or through reading. But then merely hearing and reading is not enough. Because what you hear, you will forget. It will not come handy to you. One lady came to me and said, Swamiji, I have a problem of anger. Please give me one gem of wisdom from the Vedas to help me manage, control anger. I said, Deviji, supposing I gave you a thorn and said, push it in your arm, would you do it? Why should I do it? It will hurt me. Likewise, anger hurts you. You keep it in your heart. It burns your blood. It dirties your heart. Your anger is towards the outside, but it is hurting you, so why hurt yourself? Don't keep anger. She said, Swamiji, that's a good piece of wisdom. I never thought about that. I said, but this knowledge will not help you. Because when the attack of anger comes, the knowledge will slip out. You will make the mistake. Later on, you will regret, what did I do? I scolded this person, he's 20 years elder to me, he's like my father, what happened to me? What happened was that anger is a bad thing. This knowledge slipped out and the mistake was made. So our Shastras say, Tattva Vismaranat Bhekivat. The moment you forget knowledge, human being falls to the level of animal. That vivek, that ability to discriminate between right and wrong goes. There was one Pandit in the kingdom of Raja Bhoj. Raja Bhoj has been a famous king in Indian history. Mahakavi Kalidas used to sit in his court. So Panditji, when he grew old, he became poor. He needed to marry his daughters. In that poverty, he lost his buddhi. So he thought, now what to do? Let me go and steal. Where to steal from? From Raja Bhoj's palace itself. He mingled and went into the crowd. At night, the courtiers were retiring. He hid behind the furniture. After 1 hour, he found himself all alone there. He said, now start. He managed to find the treasure chest of Raja Bhoj, where those gold bricks were. He said, all my problems solved. He was lifting up one brick when the knowledge came streaming to him. What had you read in the Garud Puran? If you steal gold, it is one of the 5 Mahapap. You will go to Kumbhipak Narak. So he said, no, I don't want to go to Kumbhipak Narak. Forget gold, let me steal diamonds. Diamonds are forever. So he found the diamond casket. He said, a fistful will be enough. Then he remembered what the Garud Puran had said about stealing diamonds. You see, this Garud Puran is a very astonishing scripture. It talks about 29 kinds of hell. If you do this sin, you will be fried in low temperature oil. And if you do this, then you will have worms in your body. So he said, I can't steal. Now he had forgotten the knowledge he came there to steal. And remembering the knowledge, he could not steal. He said, let's get out. Now how to get out? He found that the guards were standing there. There was no way. He said, I have to wait till morning. So let's go and hide somewhere where no patrol will discover me. The safest place will be the bedroom of Raja Bhoj. He entered the bedroom and the king was lying on the king-size bed. So he went and lay down below. Now the king was sleeping above the bed. Panditji was sleeping below. In the morning, a ceremony began to wake up Raja Bhoj. In the olden days, kings had all this, opulence. Brahmins started reciting Ved mantras, women started dancing, musicians started playing, elephants came to blow their trumpets, and the king started gliding from Sushupti to Swapna to Tantra Avastha. He was stretching, and he started thinking, oh, I'm so blessed, I have got so much to wake me up. These elephants are blowing their trumpets, Brahmins are there, women are dancing. So Raja Bhoj started composing a verse, praising his own opulences. Cheto hara yuvataya surido nukula sadbandhava pranaya garbhagirascha bhritya valganti danti nivahas tadalasturanga. He composed 3 lines and then stopped. He could not think of a 4th line. Now Panditji also woke up. What is Raja saying? So Raja tried again, and Valganti Dantini Vahastaralasturanga, he stopped again on the 3rd line. So Panditji started thinking, this Raja is reveling in the temporary things of the world, because when you die, you will leave it all behind. So 3rd time the Raja made an attempt. Now Panditji could not resist. He added the 4th line himself. Sammilane nayor nahi kinchidasti. That is all very well, O king, but in the last moment, some meal away, when you close your eyes, nahi kinchidasti, nothing will go. Now the Raja got startled. Hurry, I was alone in this room, where did this voice come from? And such important words of wisdom, nothing will go. Is it like God is speaking to me? But if God speaks, the least you expect is that the sound should come from the sky. It should be Akashvani. And this sound has come from below the bed. Is it Patalvani that has started? Right, dangerous. He said, call the guards, find out what's happening. Panditji said, now they will pull me out. Before they do that, let me reveal myself respectably. He poked his head up. Maharaja said, you? Maharaj, I am a known scholar of your kingdom. But what to do? Because of the poverty, my intellect got corrupted. I came to your palace to steal. But every time I would think of stealing, the knowledge would come to me. And I could not steal. And that is the reason why I came to hide here. The Raja said, you are a very honest person. But the words you added were so deep. I have developed detachment. You are like my guru. So the Raja, he rewarded him profusely, got his daughters married, etc. But look what a difference knowledge made. Forgetfulness of knowledge from the intellect made that Pandit into a thief. And remembrance of the knowledge made that thief sinless. That is why the scriptures say, whatever you hear, you keep with yourself. And how will you keep with yourself? When you revise it again and again. What you have heard, now you revise it in your mind, like the cows graze the grass. And then they sit and they chew it. They pull out from one stomach, put into the next, pull out, put into the next. Likewise you do with the knowledge. This is called mananam. And the third one is called nididhyasanam. What is nididhyasanam? This is what will create the Willpower. With your intellect you decide, yes, this is it. Create the belief. That intellect moment it decides, yes, that belief is all that is required. See, we all know the definition of God. You know, in Bharatvarsh, even a villager who cuts grass will tell you that God is inside, God is outside, God is everywhere, He is Anand Sindhu. So everybody knows the definition of God. The problem is nobody believes it. We only know it. The Kathopanishad says, Astipte vopalabdhasya tattva bhava prasidati. The day you believe in that definition of God, that very day you will become God realized. There is nothing more to do. God is standing in front of you, but you don't believe it. Or we believe 20%, 30%, 40%. So just believe in that knowledge by deciding with the intellect. The belief is the most powerful thing in our personality. So today we tapped into willpower and Willpower. Now tomorrow we will get the knowledge. Knowledge we were talking about, right? Empower your intellect with knowledge. So how does this mind work? Why do anger, greed, desire, attachment arise? How can they be eliminated? This theory, we will discuss it tomorrow. And then day after tomorrow, we will talk about the subconscious mind. So this is the plan for the 2 days ahead. Now, it is so nice to see even today, so many of you are here to listen to the science of mind management. I consider it the biggest blessing of God that during pandemic times we are having the opportunity to discuss divine wisdom. And we would like to once again express our appreciation to the Hindu Temple of Minnesota and to the Dr. Das Foundation for having jointly organized this 4-day program of yoga meditation and spiritual discourse. Let's express our appreciation.